8 North Korean individuals are now on South Korea's blacklist for their involvement in illegal arms deals and illicit cyber activities. The sanctions came in response to North's ICBM launch on December 18th. 18,904 babies were born in October here in South Korea. Now, that figure is a record low number of births for any month of October on record. The Israeli military is reportedly taking steps to shift from a high-intensity military operation to a low-intensity and long-term strategy. According to Israel's army chief, the Gaza war is far from ending. We begin with South Korea blacklisting 8 North Koreans believed to be involved in procuring funds for the North's nuclear and weapons development. That includes the chief of the regime's spy agency. Our Choi Min-jung starts us off.
South Korea has slapped a fresh round of sanctions on North Korea in response to the regime's most recent launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile on December 18th. Seoul's foreign ministry announced Wednesday that it has targeted 8 individuals. All 8 were reportedly involved in generating profits for the North Korean regime and financing nuclear weapons and missile programs through illegal cyber activities and trading sanctioned materials, including weapons. Among those on the list is Lee Chang-ho, the head of the regime's Reconnaissance General Bureau, also known as the organization behind North Korean hacking groups such as Kim Suk-ki, Lazarus, and Andariel. Lee is accused of gaining foreign currency and stealing technology through illicit cyber activities. Park Yong-han was also sanctioned for trading weapons-related goods on behalf of Korea Mining and Development Trading Corporation, North Korea's primary arms dealer. North Korean diplomat Yoon reportedly traded lithium-6, a UN-prohibited nuclear-related item. The remaining listed individuals are affiliated with Pan Systems Pyongyang, an organization sanctioned by the South Korean government in 2016 and were involved in trading North Korean-made weapons. South Korea's foreign ministry also warned that Pyongyang's provocations would come with a price. It vowed to cooperate more closely with the international community, including the US and Japan, to ensure that the regime realizes that it must stop its provocations and engage in denuclearization talks. With the sanctions now in place, those wishing to engage in financial transactions with these individuals must obtain permission from the governor of the Bank of Korea or the Financial Services Commission. The latest measures are the 14th round of sanctions to be put in place against Pyongyang since the beginning of the Yoon administration. Since October last year, South Korea has targeted 83 individuals and 53 institutions. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
North Korea reportedly kicked off its Yearend plenary meeting on Tuesday, with leader Kim Jong-un attending. According to the regime's state-run media on Wednesday, Kim attended the plenary meeting of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea to review policies for this year and discuss more for next year. He reportedly called 2023 a year of great turn and change and referred to progress on the path toward enhancing national power and promoting national prestige. Kim is widely expected to deliver a speech to unveil new policies for 2024 before the end of the meeting. 2023 was quite an eventful year on the diplomatic front. We look back on the highlights of President Yoon Suk-yeol's diplomacy in the global arena this year in keywords. Here's our top office correspondent, Oh Soo-young.
South Korea's trilateral cooperation with the United States and Japan was at the core of President Yoon Suk-yeol's summit diplomacy in 2023. First, South Korea's military-focused alliance with the US, based on the Mutual Defense Treaty signed 70 years ago, became a global comprehensive strategic alliance, broadening their scope of cooperation to areas like tech, climate, energy, and more. This came as Presidents Yoon and Joe Biden announced the Washington Declaration in April, amid North Korea's growing nuclear threat, setting out new measures to boost confidence in America's extended deterrence policy. This created the creation of the Nuclear Consultative Group, under which the two sides will discuss and develop joint nuclear response guidelines to a potential North Korean nuclear strike. The document was also a major step towards the Camp David trilateral agreements with Japan in mid-August. After the rapprochement between Seoul and Tokyo, the three leaders inked documents on their shared commitment and course of action for Indo-Pacific security and prosperity, joint responses to North Korea's security threat through missile information sharing and combined military drills, and an agreement to consult each other on regional security challenges. With over a dozen diplomatic trips this year, the South Korean leader also expanded Seoul's diplomatic horizons, given the continued geopolitical risks to global security and economies that challenge the post-war world order of globalization, free trade and multilateral institutions. Thus, Yoon has been pushing for value-based multilateral cooperation for a rules-based world order to stabilize trade and regional security and tackle climate, digital and global development challenges. He pledged Seoul's contributive diplomacy, even visiting Ukraine to show South Korea's value-based solidarity and leading global discussions on establishing new digital norms on areas like artificial intelligence. But particularly with a focus on economic security, Yoon called himself the salesman of Korea, aiming to procure critical supply chains and energy sources and strike up partnerships on developing new advanced technologies for South Korea's export-dependent economy. Major deals include the Downing Street Accords with the UK on deepening security and economic ties, including jointly developing quantum technology that could neutralize North Korean missiles. A semiconductor alliance was forged with the Netherlands to work on cutting-edge R&D in the technology, which is South Korea's #1 export item. Yoon also strengthened ties with Southeast Asian countries, sealing deals on mineral cooperation and closer trade with Vietnam and Indonesia. State visits to the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, followed by a bilateral free trade agreement with Abu Dhabi, marked a new timely chapter for South Korea's Middle East diplomacy, as the post-oil era brings both crises and opportunities to Arab states as crude suppliers and South Korea as a major importer. Next year, economic security will likely continue topping the diplomatic agenda as Seoul looks to develop new export industries in areas like bio, defense, smart agriculture and nuclear plants. 오수영, Arirang News.
At least one person has been killed and 4 others injured in a Russian attack on a railway station in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson on Tuesday. Ukraine's Interior Ministry, Ihor Klimenko, confirmed the incident, saying it took place as about 140 people prepared for an evacuation. Meanwhile, Ukraine claimed it launched an airstrike in Crimea on Tuesday, which destroyed a Russian naval vessel specialized in tank landings. The Russian Ministry of Defense acknowledged the incident, confirming that the ship had suffered damage due to a Ukrainian assault. The incident is Russia's 3rd major loss of military equipment in a week, following the destruction of 2 fighter jets in Donetsk and over the Black Sea on Christmas, and the downing of 3 Russian warplanes last week. The Israeli military is reportedly preparing to transition into a low-intensity, long-term strategy. Now, the change of action comes as the Israeli defense chief says the Gaza war will last many more months. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Israeli military says it's now preparing to shift its war operations from high-intensity fighting in Gaza to a low-intensity, long-term military action. The move comes as Washington has been calling on Israel to ease up on its heavy bombardment of Gaza and focus its attacks on Hamas infrastructure to limit civilian casualties. Israel Defense Forces Chief Herzi Halazi said Tuesday that its military is expanding its fighting in southern and central Gaza, adding that it is close to dismantling all Hamas battalions in northern regions. He said many Hamas soldiers and commanders have surrendered, with hundreds being held prisoner. However, he warned that the fight would last for many more months, saying there can be no shortcuts taken when dismantling an entire organization. While the armed conflict in Gaza nears the 3-month mark, the World Food Programme warns that as the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip is worsening, the region has now entered the so-called food crisis stage. The WFP announced on Tuesday that all 2.2 million residents of Gaza are in a state of acute food insecurity. The UN agency regularly evaluates and predicts the food situation in Gaza, with the recent assessment forecasting the situation from December to February of next year. Meanwhile, the UN named an outgoing Dutch minister as its humanitarian coordinator for Gaza on Tuesday. Sigrid Kaag, who had been the Netherlands' deputy prime minister and finance minister since January 2022, will oversee the humanitarian situation in the region. The appointment comes as the UN Security Council last week called for the safe and unhindered delivery of humanitarian assistance at scale, but did not call for an immediate halt to fighting. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Inflation expectations for December here in South Korea dropped compared to the previous month due to a downward trend in consumer prices. Now, that 3.2% figure is the lowest in over a year and a half. Yearend explains.
The Bank of Korea released results of its consumer sentiment survey on Wednesday, which shows consumer inflation expectations have dropped this month compared to the month before, amid a downward trend in consumer prices. In December, expected inflation for the year ahead was 3.2%. That's down 0.2 percentage points from the previous month, marking the lowest figure in 20 months since April last year. The central bank poll also showed the Composite Consumer Sentiment Index, or CCSI, reversed a 4-month downward streak that began in August. For December, the figure stood at 99.5, up 2.3 points from the previous month, still below the 100-point threshold, indicating that pessimists outnumber optimists. BOK officials say the improvement is due to a slowdown in rising interest rates amid hints that the cycle of U.S. Federal Reserve rate hikes has come to an end. The CCSI is used to gauge overall consumer sentiment, including for current living standards, prospective household income, and prospective spending, all of which are standardized. The central bank had expected inflation to reach a target rate of 2% by the end of this year, but now predicts inflationary pressure to continue into next year, with inflation expected to stay over 3% around the end of 2023. Yearend, Arirang News.
South Korea continues to break its own birth rate record. Back in October, fewer than 20,000 babies were born for the first time in any October on record. Yearend has more.
South Korea saw its birth rate plummet while the number of deaths rose, leading to a natural population decline in October. Data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday show that the total number of births recorded came to just under 19,000, a decrease of more than 8% compared to the same month last year. It's the first time that this figure has dipped below the 20,000 mark for any month of October since data was first compiled in 1981. The number of deaths was also the highest for any October, coming to over 30,000, which is a 3.4% rise on year. The country has seen a natural decline in the population since November 2019, and October of this year was no exception. Natural decline is calculated by subtracting the number of deaths from the number of births, meaning a figure for October of 11,889. This is the biggest drop in the natural population for any month of October ever recorded. Meanwhile, the number of marriages rose compared to both the month before and October 2022. The number of registered marriages came to just under 16,000, which is a 1% increase on year and more than 3,000 more than September this year. According to a Statistics Korea spokesperson, the reason for the rise is the fact that October has always been more popular than September for weddings. But July, August and September this year saw on-year declines unlike October. And the reason given for this was that the number of marriages saw a sharp rise in the second half of last year due to the easing of COVID-19 restrictions, meaning that the base value for last year was high. That being said, October this year saw an increase, and more observation will be needed over the coming months to see whether the marriage market is seeing a recovery or whether this is simply an anomaly. Meanwhile, the number of divorces also saw an on-year rise of 6%. Yearend, Arirang News.
The average hourly wage of women workers in South Korea rose last year to 70% that of men. That's according to a report released by the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family and the Labor Ministry on Wednesday. The report shows both permanent and temporary female workers earned around $14 per hour on average in 2022, while men earned around $20 an hour. It also shows that the employment rate gap between men and women shrank to 18.6% last year from 22.5% a decade ago. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the surveillance camera to the next level. Its capabilities have been diversified, from crowd management to satisfying customers in retail. Our business correspondent Shin-Young has this report.
안전사고가 우려되오니 안전거리를 유지하여 주시길 바랍니다.
Suwon City in Gyeonggi-do Province has been putting efforts into crowd management using AI surveillance cameras after the deadly Itaewon crowd crush last year. When AI-powered surveillance cameras detect crowd numbers surpassing a certain level per unit area, they automatically send notifications to this control room.
AI cameras directly analyze on-site video instead of using a separate analysis system, making the process faster and cost-effective. During the recent Halloween, they detected a dense crowd on the street.
As technology advances, the role of surveillance cameras is expanding beyond simply recording. An AI surveillance camera from Hanwha Vision, South Korea's leading global vision solution company, uses a bat shot feature to detect various attributes such as age groups, gender, color of clothing, and even whether a person is wearing glasses. The collected data is used to extract information on specific situations, saving time, in this case, identifying a man in a red top. Its AI camera provides an immediate response to car accidents and monitors abnormal traffic flow. An AI thermal camera issues an alert when it detects abnormal temperatures in designated objects. By utilizing AI in cutting-edge devices, including a panoramic camera that uses a stitching technique for a wider view, it offers a comprehensive solution for various industries.
AI surveillance cameras can spot jaywalkers and give early warning to prevent accidents. They also analyze customer interests and peak hours in retail stores and cafes, offering useful business insights to store owners. To enhance security, all stored data is encrypted from the design stage, and videos are stored separately in a so-called trust zone to resist hacking attempts.
Security is ensured not only during data processing, but also in certain situations where people are recognized only as shapes with objects visible behind them. The global video surveillance market is on a path of substantial expansion, with an expected valuation of over $62 billion in 2027, according to the global market research firm Statista. Aligned with advancements in AI for surveillance cameras, South Korea plans to replace all government-operated surveillance cameras with AI-equipped ones by 2027 to automatically monitor or detect emergencies around the clock. 신하영, Arirang News.
Marking their 20th anniversary, K-pop duo TVXQ have released their first album in 5 years. The duo Yoon and Max Changmin dropped their 9th full-length album 20 and 2 on Tuesday. That's the anniversary of their debut. The album features 10 songs, including the title track Rebel. TVXQ will also hold a 2-day concert at the Inspire Arena in Incheon this weekend. Originally a 5-member group, TVXQ was reduced to a duo in 2010 after 3 members departed due to a legal dispute over their contract with SM Entertainment.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. The Turkish Parliament's Foreign Affairs Commission has approved Sweden's bid to join NATO on Tuesday. Sweden's accession will now have to be approved at the General Assembly of the Turkish Parliament. Turkey's decision on Tuesday marks a key step towards the expansion of the Western military alliance, as Turkey has been delaying its approval for 19 months, demanding security-related concessions from Sweden. Turkey's change of position is linked to the US backing the sales of F-16 fighter jets, a condition which Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan openly requested in return for the ratification of Sweden's NATO membership. The Turkish Foreign Affairs Commission is controlled by Erdogan's ruling Justice and Development Party, which also holds a majority of seats in the parliament together with its allies, meaning Sweden's NATO bid is likely to be approved in the General Assembly. The United States on Tuesday banned the import of Apple Watches. The import ban comes from a patent dispute between Apple and medical technology company Masimo. Apple has lodged an appeal, but the current ban will hold until at least January 12th, when the US Customs and Border Protection will decide whether to accept Apple's request to pause the sales ban while the court considers its appeal and the redesigned versions of the Apple Watch. The US International Trade Commission ordered banning of imports and sales of Apple Watches following a complaint filed by Masimo accusing Apple of poaching its employees and stealing its blood oxygen level measuring technology, which has been featured in Apple smartwatches since its Series 6 model in 2020. The import and sales ban is likely to affect the new Series 9 and Ultra 2 Apple Watches the most. In the US, a 6-year-old boy traveling alone to visit his grandmother for Christmas was put on a wrong flight. The boy ended up in Orlando, Florida, hundreds of kilometers away from his original destination, Fort Myers, Florida. The boy left on a Spirit Airlines flight from Philadelphia under supervision of an airline's employee, but somehow boarded the wrong plane, ending up around 260 kilometers away from where his grandmother was waiting to pick him up. The grandmother, Maria Ramos, drove to Orlando Airport from Southwest Airport in Fort Myers and picked up the child. The airline has offered to reimburse her. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We are getting relief from the severe cold wave this week, with temperatures ranging similar to yesterday, hovering above the seasonal norms. But of course, it's that unwelcome fine dust, as western parts of Korea are engulfed by high levels of dust. More smog has moved in overnight, so it will be dustier today and for the remainder of the week. Meanwhile, East Coast regions are being gripped by dry air, with a dry advisory remaining in place with strong winds. Seoul sees a high of 7 degrees, Busan at 12, Jeju at 13 degrees Celsius. Skies will be mostly sunny for the central regions, Gyeongsang-Pukdo and Jeollabuk-do, but the rest of the country will see clouds passing by. But, dust-free regions should take advantage of the fine winter weather today. New Year's weekend is shaping up to be a snowy one, so travelers need to be mindful of the snow and plan accordingly, but at least there will not be a major cold snap. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That is all we have at this hour. We thank you for watching and stay safe wherever you are.